How has experiencing loss shaped you?
Some people wonder how I was able to forgive those people, but I did it so that my heart could heal.
Hey, welcome to the Danielle Strickland podcast. This is The Right Side Up in partnership with World Vision, and I'm so glad that you're listening and watching on YouTube. Hey, this is such an incredible opportunity to hear from two leaders. This is Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The words of Jesus himself helping us understand a blessed life. This is Bob Goff. Bob Goff is a friend of mine. He's an incredible man who is both humble and curious and hopeful and filled with joy. He's the balloon inflator. He calls himself the chief balloon inflator. He operates Love Does. He spends himself, it seems to me, on behalf of others in so many ways. And if you haven't caught one of his books, please do. He has several. The latest book Bob has is Dream Big. And that's a great title by him because he helps people dream big. He dreams big. And Love Does is an organization he runs that does all kinds of beautiful work around the world. So we're going to put a link to his organization in the show notes, and we'd love for you to get acquainted with Bob Goff if you don't know him. Now, Bob is simply asking some questions, and he's asking them of Alice, who is a Rwandan genocide survivor and leader. Community leader, and we are so honored to have Alice as a part of this podcast. Now, the Rwandan genocide is a sign and a wonder in a generation. You know, we're talking 25 years ago now, 1 million people killed in 40 days. This is the epicenter of a tribal violence that is, just the ground zero, the fallout just was a decimation of an entire nation. It took years and years for them to get there, by the way, and it took a lot of elements of racism and judgmentalism and nursing resentments over many, many years until finally, there was this genocide. And Alice is a survivor, and she talks very clearly in this interview. If you're watching on YouTube or want to watch on YouTube, she shows you actually the scars in her body, as well as is very open with the scars in her own life, emotional health and all sorts of things. And there is this blessing that we get to hear from Alice, not only who went through her own sorrow, deep, deep sorrow and mourning to the point where, as she shares, she didn't even want to live, but found God in the midst of that sorrow, and now not only has found comfort in her life, but also is able to comfort, which is, of course, the great blessing. Freely we receive the blessing, and then freely we become and we give that blessing away. So please listen to Alice. Alice not only has experienced this in her own life, but she also helps lead other people. She's an example. She's a light on a hill. She's the light of the world. She's a shining light. She is an expert in what it means to live the blessed life. Let's listen into Bob and Alice as they talk about living right side up.
Hey, it's Bob Goff here. We're talking about the Beatitude, blessed are those who mourn. I've got a couple questions. How has experiencing loss shaped you?
My name is Mukarurinda Alice. I live in Mukarurinda district, Nharama sector in Nyamata town. I am 51 years old. I have 5 children and I'm a widow. In 1994, the plan to exterminate all the Tutsi was implemented. They came to the places where we were hiding and displaced us. They burned churches. They found us where we were hiding and killed many people. They took my baby from my arms and killed her. They left thinking I was dead, but God protected me. I survived. It wasn't 1 or 2. Many came to me to ask for forgiveness, including Emmanuel Nhambara Gwabuyonza. It took him a long time to ask for forgiveness. He told me all that he had done to me during the genocide. I wasn't happy about that. I wasn't happy about what he told me. I got annoyed and confused. I even got traumatized and was taken to the hospital. At that time, we both were members of World Vision's Unity and Reconciliation Club, doing various activities together. It took me a while to digest the information he had shared with me, but after some time, I decided to forgive him.
What can I know about loss that might help me encounter God in that space?
I am a Christian, and before the genocide, I was a Christian and prayed to God. I realized the word of God that talks about forgiveness. God continued to speak to me about forgiveness. Like in Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 to 10, talks about forgiveness. Says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." It continues to say that whoever is not merciful to people will not be shown mercy. Those are the words that helped me a lot. Those words kept in my heart even in 1994 when I was in the swamp. At one point, I thought I was dreaming because the month I spent in the swamp, I did not have a Bible. Even later, the words kept coming back to me every time I opened my Bible. Those words were just in my heart. Because of these words, plus the unity and reconciliation training from World Vision, I decided to forgive those who wronged me during the genocide. Despite the fact that they had cut off my hand and killed my family, I realized that not all Hutus were evil. I stopped generalizing calling all Hutus evil because not all Hutus participated in the genocide. I started praying to God to bring to me those people who killed my family. I knew I would feel better and heal if they asked for forgiveness. Some people wonder how I was able to forgive those people, but I did it so that my heart could heal. Like God forgives us, I also had to forgive others. There was a time I thought about the genocide survivors who were raped and infected with HIV/AIDS. I thought about those who were left with more severe disabilities. I thought about those who, due to the pain, resorted to using drugs and had their lives messed up. The mixture of pain and drugs driving them crazy psychologically and moved around abusing all Hutus. I prayed to God to help them and to protect them from that kind of trauma. I started by forgiving myself and prayed for the strength to forgive others.
What can I do for friends who are mourning right now?
The advice I can give to him is to first of all understand that he or she is human and to know that the person he or she is going to help or speak to is human. If you fully understand that you are both human, you will be able to do the right thing. And one is able to do the right thing through prayer. If you get close to God and read the Word of God, you'll be able to humble yourself and have a merciful heart. Have a merciful heart and know that the person he or she is talking to is also human. The first thing, he has to have a loving heart. Love brings compassion to the people. This also helps you to listen to what someone is saying. It is important to be a good listener. Listening helps you to understand and gives you the ability to advise someone accordingly. For you to help someone in pain, the first approach is listening to them. Get closer to them, listen to them, understand them, try to be like them. The person you are talking to will then open up to you and disclose to you everything that is happening in their lives. If such a person tells you what he is going through, the first thing is not pray. First, see if you are able to help them financially. If someone is hungry, before you pray for them, feed them. If you have a kilo of rice, give them a half. If you share the little you have with them, they will feel closer to you, and this will be the right time to pray for them. When one is in pain and you get closer to them, to him or her, you talk to them, comfort them, they will trust you. Where possible, you don't only support them in prayer, especially when they have other problems.
What does God's comfort look like for you right now?
Like I said, I got saved before the genocide. However, after genocide, my faith was shaken. Even during the genocide, the perpetrators asked us where our God was. I stopped praying for a while. I started blaming God for what had happened to me. I asked myself why I had lost my arm. But when I looked back, I remembered many people who died, my age mates, friends, and relatives, those who died from Nyamata, including my parents. Even when you go there, you can find clothes they were wearing. Because of all that, I lost interest in going to churches, people, even those I prayed with. I later came back to my senses and remembered that all people who died. Knowing that I wasn't special than them, I realized that there was a reason I survived. I then came back to God and said, I cannot leave God. When He left me with both legs, I have eyes and a brain to think. Even though I lost my arm and many of my family members, there is a reason I survived. I believe many people who look at me and those who know my story know there is a God who saved me from death. If we did not have World Vision during that difficult times from 1995 to 2005, if World Vision had not supported us both physically and spiritually, most of us would have died of poverty and trauma. God comforts us through people when they come to us and support us during such times.
Wow. I mean, wow, as in blow your mind, wow. I mean, take a deep breath. I feel like I should just lead a breathing exercise at the end of each of these interviews because they're so deep and beautiful and meaningful and there's so much to learn. First of all, thank you, Bob, for just modeling, not just in this podcast, but just in life, what it means to live curious and at the feet of other people, open-eyed and open-minded and open-hearted, just some of the things I've learned from Bob Goff. So thank you, Bob, for posturing so well and for doing this and lending your platform and voice to a kingdom ideal, a kingdom that is coming. And we see that kingdom coming through you. So thanks to Bob Goff. Alice, and I mean, this is being translated. So if you speak French, you heard it first. If you speak English, you heard it second. But wow, Alice, couple takeaways from this interview. One, thank God you're alive. And what I mean by that is, I mean that one of my takeaways from what you shared is that moment when you realized that your life was a gift. I'm gonna lose it here, but I know so many people, and even in my own life, and maybe you in your life struggle with this, but like sometimes we just struggle with being the one that survives, right? The one that made it. Or even the one that is blessed, the one that is comforted when we know of many other people who didn't make it, And Alice, eloquently shared, everyone was gone. Like, my friends were dead. My family was dead. My baby, my 9-month-old baby. Oh, wow. I can't even, wow. Anyway, I'm going to pull it together here, and in all this mourning, just this thought, and it really is, I think, what happens in suffering and mourning, this kind of guilt, right? The survivor guilt, but also, you just see the voice of the enemy in it, right? Like you don't deserve to live. Like, why should you live? Like, who are you? What made you special? Like, there's all these sort of accusatory voices in our lives when it comes to mourning and suffering, and when tragic things happen. I mean, even in this setting, where many of us will be like, we don't even want to compare our suffering to somebody like Alice because we just think it's not worthy. But actually, there is no comparison when it comes to mourning or suffering. They're all, all mourning and suffering is pain. It's sorrow. It's, here we are. And then we can just get trapped in this sort of like cynical, desperate, despairing kind of cycle in our mourning, where it's like, I don't deserve to be here, so I'm just going to like continue to despair and kind of despise my own life. And I loved that moment that Alice shared where she just said, like, suddenly I realized that my life was a gift. Suddenly I realized that my life was a gift, that all these people didn't have a life, but I did. Like, literally, here I am. So maybe this life is a gift for me, but also maybe this life is a gift for others as well. And that, oh boy, just that, like, maybe we're here on purpose. Maybe our life, every bit of it, every life, every breath, every moment, everything we've survived, maybe it's all redeemable. So that moment where she's like, wait a minute, I can wallow in this thing. I can be lost in this sorrow and this grief. And actually, I think it would be okay to do that in the light of the momentous, just the nature of the size of this grief. But then to have this aha, this moment of, wait a minute, I'm alive. I'm alive, and my life is a gift, both to me, but also to others. So wow, I just want to weep for a little while, which, I give you permission to just weep for a bit and let God speak to you in our own mourning. And my deep desire, even as you're listening to this, but maybe even others that who are feeling the sorrow and the mourning, that are in the midst, the pit of that despair, that they would encounter a God who sees the sacredness of their life, that there would be this, and obviously, like, Hagar comes to my mind, the first person to really name God in the scriptures in Genesis is this woman who is despairing and who is just in mourning because her life's over and her baby's life's over and she doesn't fit the narrative. And God says to her, I see you, like, I see you. And she names God, the God who sees. And says, I have seen the God who sees, So just that you would be seen, that you would be known, that you would know that your life matters, that you're not here by accident, that you're here, that God can use every single thing, even the deepest grief, that God can use it. Nothing is wasted in a kingdom economy. So thank you, Alice, for sharing that revelation. And how that revelation has mattered both for your own comfort, so that your life becomes your own source of comfort, that God comforts you by the idea that you are alive, but also that you begin then to comfort others. And that's what I also really I got out of Alice's response, that she became somebody who would model what this kingdom looks like. Like, what does it look like to not just live theoretical forgiveness, but to have a perpetrator who has taken virtually everything from you. If you want to go to the show notes, we'll link to the video of Alice's life where you'll meet the guy that, in the moment he describes it, he says he came and he knelt down at her feet, just like in the pavement in the road, just so overcome by the spirit of conviction and repentance. And he just said, would you please somehow consider forgiving me? Like, I am so sorry. I did this. It's on me. I took this from you, and he just sort of pours out his life. And he describes that what happened to Alice was not some instantaneous forgiveness. What happened was she actually fainted. She fainted, and people had to come and take her away. And it took her weeks to get to a place where she was like, okay, What am I going to do with this repentance? Like, what am I going to do now that I'm faced with exactly what Jesus told me to do? I know what to do. I know the right thing to do according to my theology, but how am I going to do this in real life, you know? Oh, and she does. She just says, like, I remind myself I've been forgiven, and then I choose to forgive because that's what God told me to do. And I think the takeaway here is that, like, it's not always the feel good, you know, it's not like cue the lights and the music, you know, and friends are friends forever, you know, like there's none of this going on. It's like, it's a decision that we make. It's a hard path to follow. It's a posture of our lives that we have been comforted when we thought there was no comfort, and now we comfort those who think there is no possibility of comfort. And just the example of that, jeepers. Boy, does it ever right-size my own petty grievances, you know, and also, you know, not to dismiss them because everybody's grievance is their own and everyone's mourning at their own level, but also to know that at that deepest, darkest place, you know, which I think, again, we know, you know, David said, you know, even if I make my bed in hell, you know, there God is, you know, I can't escape the presence of God. I mean, we set up this religious system so well sometimes in our lives to believe that there's some way that we can separate ourselves from God, and we cannot. God refuses to be our enemy. He is our friend and a present help, and he is present even when we don't think it or feel it or think it even could possibly be. There he is, even in the pit of hell. And that really is the example that Alice presents to us. Anyway, there are so many things I could talk about this all day. I am so thrilled we got to hear from Alice, and so amazed at all of the takeaways. I would love to hear from you, by the way. So if you have a takeaway, you could leave it in a comment. I would just love to celebrate all it is that God is teaching us through these opportunities to hear from these incredible experts and what it means to encounter God, to really experience God. And here's what I'm praying, that we would all experience God in the deepest and darkest places where we mourn, that we wouldn't be afraid, that we wouldn't close our hearts off to weep and to mourn, because right in that spot is where we will find the great comforter. And then we will also be able to comfort others. If you're tracking with us in this podcast, please consider joining us for the Matthew 25 challenge. So this is at the very end of the podcast. We're going to celebrate by participating, by encountering, by immersing ourselves. So if you're traveling with anybody, or you've got a family, or you've got some friends that just want to go in and sort of say, you know what, why don't we just take 1 week and move towards, lean into what it might mean to live a blessed life and what it means for people all around the world, and how they really live, you know, and how we can empathize a little bit more, just push into that posture of listening a little bit further and see what God might want to teach us. Man, this right side up living is not easy. And I guess this is part of what it's bewildering to us, because we would say, blessed are those whose lives are great, who are untouched by pain. You know, that's what we want to be true. But the truth, Jesus said, is that we discover God. You know, we encounter God. We participate in the life of Jesus. And Jesus, of course, is a man of sorrows. That's how he's introduced in the scriptures. He's acquainted with our grief and our suffering. He suffered a lot. He wept. And he didn't hide it. He was a weeper. And was unashamed, because that's what it means to be human. And here's a theological wowzer. That's what it means to be God. So I'm praying you're going to live a blessed life. I'm praying that you won't wall your heart off from pain and from suffering. I'm praying that you will move towards the blessing that is found in being comforted in your own suffering and mourning, just like Alice, so that not only would you be comforted, but that you would also be a comfort. Thanks for listening to the Danielle Strickland podcast. Let's live right side up. Hey, thanks for tracking with us with this podcast. I'm excited about the implications in our own lives and in our world. as we learn how to do this together. If you want to join the Matthew 25 Challenge, which all of this is culminating towards an encounter and experience, your family with my family and all the families around the globe, let's do this together. November 15 to 21 is when that happens, that 1 week of your life to just move towards the blessing of a right side up life. You can join if you're in the US by texting BLESSED to 44888. Or if you're in Canada, you can text BLESSED to 98669. Or if you're a global listener, man, do we need you to help us. Go to worldvision.org/right side up, worldvision.org/right side up. And if you're listening to this after November 2020, you don't miss out on any of the fun. Go ahead, go to worldvision.org/right side up, and you'll find how you can do more to encounter and put to use this knowledge that you just experienced. So thanks so much for traveling with us. I hope you can join me for the Matthew 25 Challenge and also the blessed life of living right side up.